Hello everyone, I'm Max and I'm happy to have you over yet another code alone video for the Stock Counselor project. Last week we've covered some basic ground, right? We've described what version 0.1 is expected to have our directory structure in, and we have also dipped into the code. We've implemented the boundary logic, at least as far as at least until version 1.0. Today we are moving along to implement our controller logic, and hopefully we will also cover the Backend Tasks API. Now, the first time our controller logic is used is in the boundary file. If we go over to line 87, as you can see, we initiate the controller object right here, and we pass it a single argument to the constructor, which is log ID, right? So that our controller knows exactly how to log the details of its execution. Now we are initiating our controller object in the boundary because the boundary is expected to have the necessary input from the user, and this input is needed by our controller to perform what it's written for, right? All of this is done according to the design pattern that is named Entity Controller Boundary. That being said, we've covered the introduction and we are ready to, actually code the controller. I've jumped right into the controller file. Now let's take a look at what it is expected to be and to do. So first of all, our controller logic is expected to reveal an API for the boundary to consume. And the boundary does exactly so by calling the collect financial data method from the controller object. Now the task of the controller is to receive input from the boundary and transform it eventually into a backend task. Since we're talking about tasks, obviously they gonna have some kind of progress, right? Any task, well, first of all, it's initiated, then we're doing some work on it, and after it is finished. Which is why we have an additional class which extends from enum, and it's called collection progress, right? It's the idea behind it is that it will have permanent values. Each value represents a different state of the financial data collection task, backend task. And now that we know more or less what the code in the controller API file is expected to be and to do, let's cover the dependencies. At line 1, we're importing a Backend Tasks class from the Backend Tasks API file, right? We're doing so in order to get access to the functionality that creates, reads, updates, CRUDs the Backend Tasks. At line 2, we're importing Backend Task Progress class, which extends an enum, from the common directory. Now, there's a slight difference between Backend Task Progress class and Collection Progress, right? Obviously, more than one service will have backend tasks, and all of them have a progress initiated and the progress finished, right? These values are stored in Backend Task Progress class. And in Collection Progress class, we are going to store values that are related specifically to the tasks of financial data collection. An additional class that we are importing from the common directory is at line 3, it's loggable, right? So as you can see, our controller class at line 12 actually extends the loggable, and as you might have guessed, it reveals a certain amount of methods that allow to log execution details. And once again, more than one class in more than one services will want to log its execution details, which is why we've placed this common loggable logic under the common directory. And at line 4 is the last import that we're doing. We're importing the enum, obviously, for our collection progress class from line 6 to extend it. It comes from the enum module, which you have access to by default after you install the Python. Okay, let's move along to line 10 and fill them permanent values for our collection progress. So first of all, we're talking about state started, right? And its value is gonna be financial data collection has been started. Cool. Now we will be doing some work on it, right? So let's store the in progress, which is gonna be financial data collection is in progress. Hopefully everything goes right and our task gets to the state finished. Financial data collection has been collected. Okay, perfect. Our collection progress class is ready. And now, as to the controller class itself, well, we are going to initiate objects of it, right? So we will start by implementing the constructor. First things first, we are extending the loggable class, which is why we should go over to the common directory loggable API file and see if it expects any arguments. Its constructor is at line 6 and we have two expected arguments. The first one is ID, the second one is the class name. From the documentation we see that class name represents the name of the descendant class, in our case is the controller class, and ID is the logger object ID in the login module, which we are using to manage our logger object. Okay, cool. So back to our controller API file, back to controller class, and we jump to line 25. As our controller object is being initiated, we first of all would like to call the constructor of the loggable class. How we're gonna do it? Well, we'll access the super point init method, right? As you can see from the pop-up, the expected arguments are ID and class name. Our ID is represented by log ID and class name is gonna be controller. I'm simply using a string and not, writing it down in other alternative ways because, well, we are aiming to write a quality code. And as far as class names go, they should stay consistent throughout all of our versions. The next line, we will initiate the Backend Tasks argument, and as you can see by the underscore before the name, it's gonna be a private attribute. It is initiated by calling the Backend Tasks constructor, and we pass the only expected input log ID. Let's take care now of the public method collect financial data, which is also consumed by our boundary logic. First of all, our collection financial data is expected to return a string, and the string will contain the value of the backend task progress related obviously to the collection of the financial data. The only argument that it expects is the company acronym of type string, and it represents the unique identifier of a company at a stock exchange. In other words, it's the company symbol. As usually, we have not only declaration, but also the steps that our function is expected to perform. So first of all, we will log the method's starting point. After it, we will obtain the current progress of the backend task related for the company acronym. Based on its value, we will prepare the result of our method, log the method's finish point, and eventually return the method's result. Now, back to the first step, log the method's starting point. Since our class extends the loggable class, we have an access to the debug error info methods. Now, of course, they are not implemented yet. We will take care of them in the video next week. However, their declaration is enough to start using them, right? Back to our controller class, at line 36, we can call the private method self-point debug, right? The function name is obviously collect financial data, and our message should be start and the arguments, right? So we pass in the company acronym argument, and we would like to know its value. Now we are passing it. Nice. The progress of the backend task we will store in a variable progress, and we will obtain it through the private function of the controller's object, which is called collection progress. It is already been declared, however, we will implement it in a few moments, right? And it expects a single argument, which is company acronym. Once we have the progress, there are a couple of scenarios, right? So the first one is, well, does it exist, right? So we will check if not progress. Well, what it means? The progress doesn't exist in case there is no backend task. And if there's no backend task, it means that we should create one, which is precisely what we are going to do with the help of our backend tasks attribute. And we will call the create task by company acronym function, and it expects to receive company acronym. Obviously, our result will be collection progress enum point started, and in order to not return the enum, right, which does not look pretty, we will take the value, and the value of the enum will be the string, which in detail explains that financial data collection has just been started. The next case relates to the progress, existing, right? It has some kind of value, which means the backend task exists, right? Let's check elif progress equals, let's see if it's finished. Backend task progress enum point finished point value. Two things to note here. The first thing is the use of backend task progress enum instead of the collection progress. We do that because our progress argument that is obtained at line 39 is eventually received from the backend tasks private attribute. Now, obviously, backend tasks cannot differ, it cannot be aware of different types of tasks, right? All it can do is CRUD, create, update, delete, create, read, update, delete the tasks. That's all. Hence, we use the backend task progress enum, which is intended for the general purposes. The second item that we should note is the use of the point value. We will be storing our backend tasks in the text files. And whenever you store, for example, an enum like backend task progress point finished, its default string representation is misinformative. You will not understand what it means if you open the text file, which is why we have to use the point value, the custom string representation that we are writing ourselves, and we're writing it in enough details to understand what the progress actually means. In case our progress indicates that the task is finished, all we have to do is update our result argument to collection progress point finished point value. And the last case, which gonna be simple else, well, if our progress exists and it is not finished, it can only mean that somebody has to be working on it, right? Which is why the result will be updated to collection progress point in progress point value. Now, before returning our result, we will log the execution details, right? So self.debug, our method is still collect financial data. This time it's gonna be finish, and we will log the result value. Okay, let's just pass it. Cool. And the last step is obviously to return our result back to the caller. The last thing for today is to take care of our collection progress private method. Let's go to line 56 and take a look at the method. So first of all, it's expected to return a string or none, right? I've forgotten to mention it, sorry. The value, right, the string value, should be the backend task progress enum representation, string representation, and the argument that the method expects is company acronym, and as mentioned at line 60, it should be of type string, and it represents the company's stock symbol at a stock exchange. Now, as to the method's steps. First of all, we will log its starting point, and at the end, we will log its finish point and return the result. In between, we will obtain a background task with the help of our backend tasks private property and inspect its contents. Based on the contents, we either return the string representation of the progress or none. Let's go to line 63, and code our first step. So self debug, the method name is underscore collection progress, its message is start, and the argument that we have been passed is company acronym, and the value is company acronym. Now, as to the background task object, so let's create a variable background task, right? And we will receive it with the help of our backend tasks private property get task by company acronym, and we will be passing our company acronym argument. Let's take a brief look at what our get task by company acronym method is expected to return. So with the help of the magical pop-up, thanks to PyCharm, we can see that it returns a dictionary with the information about a backend task. Cool. Which means that once we have our background task variable, we can check if not progress keyword in background task point keys. It means that our background task is an empty dictionary, and it can be an empty dictionary only in case there is no background task, which means that there is no progress and our result should be none. Else, the progress key is among the background task keys, which means that the task exists and we would like to return its progress, which is why result equals to, or result is assigned, better to say assigned, the background task progress key. Once the result is ready, we can log our finish point, self_debug. Function name is collection progress, and the message is finish point result, and we add its value, and the last thing to do is return result. Ladies and gents, thank you for joining me today for the Code Alone video. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to ask me, Max, directly through my Twitter profile or even LinkedIn, or you could ask Gabro at his Twitter profile or LinkedIn, who is behind most of the code, right? I'm just doing the pretty talk, and I hope that is pretty. Next week, we're expected to implement the Backend Tasks API file, and also to touch on what is inside the command, right, to implement the command. Hopefully we will also have time to do some tests, right, actually fire up our server and see that the data gathering main service can create and persist backend tasks. All of it is next Wednesday. I hope to see you and have a great week.